We have two guests who are kind of experts on smart transportation from let's just see, from May Mobility and Kamil and Kam from the Everest group. They are both kind of working on smart transportation systems to really take a lot of these advanced technologies like AI and machine learning and turn it into things that we can experience, such as being able to move through a city quicker and not being stuck at a red light, which is happens to me all the time, to help save energy through unnecessary wasted traffic jams. So, this is kind of an example of where 5G, even if we don't understand it, is really going to help us on our day-to-day life. So with that, would perhaps start with you, Kam, to get your perspective on the practical use of machine learning for smart transportation systems, to kind of get your perspective.
Hi, General. It seems like me and my panelists both have the same almost name, Kam and Kamil. So when you said Kam, I wasn't sure. So thanks for having me for this talk. Basically, my background in technology is for 20 years. I was advisor to Cisco Connected Car Group. I co-founded a car company. I invested in a couple of technology companies. That one does kind of optimization for airline and airport, and the other one is a company that focuses on logistic and transportation, like a digital broker, basically sending a product from point A to point B very effectively with minimum carbon footprint, because you want to maximize the load that you put into the trucks. So this way you have more going from point A to point B instead of trucks being less than a full. And in reality today, only 30% of full truck loads are full. So in order to increase the utilization, the capacity, you can only do that through data. You can't improve something if you don't measure it. So the more you collect data, the better you're able to optimize. And I have, as I mentioned, kind of investment in multiple companies, and all of them boil down to how effectively you're able to increase utilization. Because when you increase utilization, you reduce costs. So that's kind of how I see the good application of AI.
Great. And then Kamil, because these are your first names, not your last names, we can say you guys are definitely not related, but somehow in the big scheme of things, there is some kind of spiritual connection here. Kamil, would love to get your perspective.
Sure, and maybe before I answer your actual question, let me give you a quick background about what May Mobility is and what we do, because it's probably good to have that context. So May Mobility is an AV company. We are an autonomous vehicles company. We are a software company, but we are also a services company, because our mission is to transform cities. So we typically provide services to different cities around the world, and we help to improve primarily their public transportation system. So we actually operate today in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in Arlington, Texas, and Higashi, Hiroshima, Japan, and we're about to launch here in India as well, which is very exciting. In fact, we've actually done over 270,000 autonomous rides in real cities, on real roads, with real people, like no NDAs needed. Any one of us can hop into those vehicles and just have a fully autonomous ride. We're responsible for roughly, according to the publicly available data, for roughly 50% of all commercial AV rides in US. So we are an AV company, and data, just like Kam mentioned, is a huge part of what we do. So going back to your actual question, I will give you 3 examples of where we're using and increasing the usage of AI and ML in our operations. So first and foremost, obviously, while developing our autonomous system, especially on the perception side, so how we recognize different objects. We are probably less optimistic about AI, more on the planning behavior side than some of our peers in the industry, because we think that it's a hard challenge to hope to have seen every single situation, and depending on that, for the system to be able to handle it. So we're actually relying on some other technology in that space that our founder developed at MIT and the U of M. But we're also using AI to process all of our data from our operations, from our real sites, to help us better target the development of the system. So if we know we don't handle certain situations great, AI can help us to identify that. But the AV space is just one of those spaces. We also use AI and machine learning to better plan our routes. So in the dispatching space. We have a great partnership with VIA, a company called VIA in Arlington, where they're helping us to optimize our dispatching of the on-demand service using AI. And then last but not least, which is an area that's very developing and we're very excited for, is around providing more visibility into the life of the cities. If you think about AVs, they're really sensor on wheels, right? They drive around the city and those sensors are helpful to make the right decisions, but they're also collecting information about how the city moves. Imagine a situation if you could ask all your buses at the end of the shift about like which roads are crowded and which street and which maybe traffic lights are not synchronized properly, or where the crosswalks are not placed accordingly to what actually how people use them. And with AVs, we can actually measure that. And AI is super helpful to identify those patterns because there's a lot of that data, and trying to do that manually would just not be possible. So those are just 3 quick examples, but there's many more that we're seeing adoption of AI in our space.
You know, what's interesting is, you know, both of you have touched on something that I didn't actually kind of think about until you mentioned, is that these systems are actually really happening. That, you know, we think it's really in the distant future, but actually it's not. We're really starting to see smart transportations come in, and to both your comments, kind of coming in invisibly or kind of behind the scenes. What is your thought on you know, and this is a question for both of you, unscripted, on the how soon we'll start seeing autonomous vehicles and the relationship between autonomous vehicles and, you know, people just driving cars like myself. Kam, if you want to take that first. And I didn't know, Kam, that you had invested in so many companies and, you know, we're like the super wealthy guy. We
you know, I think, let me just tell you, when I was at the Cisco Connected Car Group, I realized that there's a lot of opportunity in transportation. So when my friend said, you know, I sold the car, now I need to start a company, I was the first investor, and that's how Rizvani Motors started. And the first person that test drove our car was Larry Ellison from Oracle. We shipped the car to his mansion. He test drove it there. Jay Leno did the program, and we sold the car to one of the founding member of Blackstone. He had 84 car, and our car was 85th. So in a way, you could say maybe Rizvani Motors is for billionaires car. But I personally, the reason I wanted to join this gathering, I want to be involved with the technology that affects 1 billion life in a positive way. And that's not through what we have done through my own car company. That's the reason I really see amazing opportunity on 5G and AI, because, you know, human in nature, we're mobile. Yes, we have home, but outside of the home, we need transportation. And one of the, I was listening to the panels earlier with Congressman Eric Salwal and also Deputy Mayor Jean Holm. I actually invited Jean to this event. And one thing that she mentioned that was very powerful is she said, if you want to increase the value of the real estate, the best way to do is to block the road so the cars are not coming into the road. Of course, you need the car, but you do it in a very nice monitoring, closely monitored way. So this way, kids could play on the street. You know, there would be a lot of interaction, maybe new type of restaurants, and all of that increases the home value. So this is one of the good example of how technology could translate to real solution and improve people's life. And actually, the office that I'm in right now is at the Zoom Transportation, 5-year-old company. In less than 5 years, they have gone from almost like 2.5 million in valuation to 100 million. So I see a lot of opportunity for this multi-trillion-dollar industry, and especially with 5G, it's even greater.
Well, Kam, we're definitely going to bring you back to the Indiana 5G zone so you can give us all a tutorial on how to make money. Because
I actually got invited to attend that meeting, but since COVID happened, I have reduced my traveling.
So Kamil, we actually have a question from you on the chat, and I do encourage people who are dialed in to ask questions. So someone actually asked you a question on the use of machine learning to find potholes, to not only help people avoid them, but tell cities what are the biggest potholes and slowing down the traffic the most. So that's kind of a great question on how something that seems very abstract like machine learning can actually provide kind of immediate value to people, as in don't drive here, and also telling cities, hey, you should fix this because this pothole is causing a bigger problem across the whole city. Would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, first of all, it's a great question, but it's also a question that's very much aligned to our product roadmap. Those are the kind of solutions that we're working on. And going back to our model, we provide transportation service to cities. So our customers oftentimes are the city planners. And so the core purpose of that service is to move people around. But one of the things that we learn as we deployed it in real life is that we have additional services that we can offer. One of them is understanding how your city moves, what problems the city has, by just driving around and collecting data about it. So the pothole example is actually a pretty common one. I'm almost kicking myself for not mentioning it myself because it's such a good one. So it is something that we're working on to be able to give our city partners that information back, that maybe you have a pothole here that should be addressed. So yeah, definitely in our scope.
Well, that's the beauty of these Indiana 5G zone events. They are truly live and unscripted, where we bring together smart people and we see what happens. So, one thought back to you, Kam, since I've now realized, you're a gazillionaire. Where do you see the breakthroughs happening in smart transportation that us regular people might want to watch and invest in, given your sense of, what maybe even things that you've invested in yourself that will give us insight on, where will the breakthrough happen? Where will the big economic benefits happen? Where will the new companies happen? Kind of unscripted question, but given your background in making successful investments, what if you were putting in your money, which obviously you are, what do you think would be one of the first breakthroughs or new companies next to Kamil's, of course, who's going to help find potholes around the world? And
I actually think the greatest opportunity is when you bring more people into the transportation industry. And when I say transportation, it has many segments. For example, food delivery is one segment. A co-founder of Uber, someone that I happen to know, started a company for food delivery and food preparation. I believe every neighborhood could be involved in that, and there's the elements of transportation into it. For the what we have dealt for past year, COVID, there's a need for changing the healthcare. So telemedicine is great, but then you need services. Let's say you're in India, you need an oxygen tank to be delivered to your home. So transportation now becomes essential. And I think the innovation comes from those digital innovation that you reinvent the transportation in the digital way, similar to, it's funny that I know Kamil from when he was at the GE Digital. We were involved in a project with GE in regards to intelligent ports, which is another topic of discussion. But whenever you want to reinvent, you need to model it. And it's much better to model it on the digital space. We have relationship with companies that are creating a massively real-time engine. And just to tell you, one of the best application of quantum computing and AI is in transportation, not necessarily on one aspect of autonomy, on whole bringing the marketplace together. As I mentioned, the company that I'm involved right now in their office, Zoom Transportation, they want to make the shipment of good to be frictionless, but then there's lots of opportunity that companies that Kamil is involved, where you want to do the last mile services. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to have everything centralized. We wanted to have decentralized. So I think that's one of the best innovation, to create new companies in digital space. And after you validate it on digital space, people say, I like it. Then you go, you build the physical product. And to just give you this on my closing comment, when I invested in the Rezvani Motors, it was just based on one rendering. That one rendering became a company. So this is something that I would recommend for new businesses.
Yeah.
Great.
And if you don't mind, I wanted to jump in as well, because I may not be an investor, but I do want to make a pitch for my industry and underscore something that Kam said, because the way that I always think about it is that if you look back at the history, there were two industries that have always driven humanity forward, right? It's transportation and power. Those are the big enablers that account for most of the step function changes in our history. And I don't think it's any different. I think better transportation will enable people to uplift themselves, to really give them access to bigger opportunities that today may not be accessible. And that's why we were so focused on transforming cities as a company, because by giving people greener, more accessible, more equitable transportation, we actually can create new economic opportunities for them. So for us, it's not really about just the technology, which is obviously fun. I'm a technologist, I'm a nerd, I love it. But also that bigger mission of how transportation can unlock those new opportunities, it's so big. And that's why I personally love this space. And if I had some disposable income, I would definitely be investing in transportation.
So, you know, we actually have a fun question on the chat from someone who's asking about flying cars and taxis. It's a kind of an interesting one, since you know we have two futurists on Kam, who's the investor, and Kamil, who's the doer. Who I guess now I know are friends. What is both of your thoughts on, you know, is this something that is going to happen? Is it real? I mean, are we actually going to see these electric taxis fly around? What's this is your chance to make a futuristic statement that'll be recorded in video, and people will ask you, check back in 5 years. So would love a kind of visionary thought from both of you, both from, is it going to happen? Are we going to have enough of these flying things to make a difference in taxis? Kam, what's your thought?
I think drones are great technology. And actually the project that we had with GE for Intelligent Port, it was about an autonomous drone going next to the cargo ship, measuring the emission. And I know this is a very valuable data, because today there is no smog check for the shipping industry. So I see a lot of value for aviation, drones, whether it's through man control, human control, or through just the autonomy. I think humans are a little bit further down, because inside the city, if you have congestion, if there's a malfunction, not only you endanger your own health, you also endanger the people who are underneath you. If you are out in the countryside, yes, I think flying is one of the greatest imagination of human being. But in the city, on the crowded area, I think we have a chance to do more underground. We have a chance to do more through car sharing, ride sharing. So, but I do believe aviation could be a life changer for places like in Africa for delivering medical necessities, you know, virus, vaccination, things like that. I think that's the best way to do it through air.
Great. And Kamil, do you have any thoughts?
Sure, yeah, I can try, although I'm not an expert in this space. I will, however, say that I do think that the EVTL, electrical vertical takeoff and landing, it will happen. There's great companies that are working on that, and we probably will see some sort of implementation, commercial grade implementation of it eventually. And I guess that eventually is the tough part of the question, right? Because honestly, we as humans are really bad at predicting technology. Because we tend to think very linearly. versus technology often goes more on that J curve, on more exponentially, when the initial progress seems slow and we oftentimes get very disappointed, and then it catches us by surprise how quickly you got here, right? Even today, you didn't realize that you could take a ride in AV in Indy or Grand Rapids. Like now, the technology has arrived, and many of us are probably caught off guard by that. And I think similar things happen for many other up and coming industries, and that's what I think will happen here as well. That's why it's really hard for us to predict, and because that initial progress is slow, I wouldn't say it's not worth investing either, right? Or not investing our time and effort, because if we try to avoid the things that are hard to predict, we as humanity would still be working on the next iteration of the candle instead of using light bulbs, right? Because innovation does not always happen iteratively. You do have to invest in ideas that may seem ridiculous.
And we actually one more question from chat before we go to break. It's kind of an interesting one. You know, we've been talking about people, but the person kind of asked the question about agriculture and reducing. It's a kind of interesting one, which is, I mean, we all need food to survive. You know, what is the potential of autonomous vehicles to, you know, this kind of farm to table? And typically farm to table is really meant farm to restaurant. But with autonomous vehicles, we could have farms delivering right to individual homes, which, you know, opens the door for a much fresher produce in everybody's home, which would be a good thing for you know, people like me who seem to put on weight. Have you, again, just kind of our closing thought, Kam, do you have any thoughts on the role of autonomous vehicles to really create new supply chains, which is kind of the heart here, where, you know, now farmers can send right to people's home. You don't have to go to the farmer's market on the weekend.
Yeah, if you remember, I mentioned that my interest is to have a technology or be a part of a technology that affects 1 billion lives. And before COVID, I was at Davos promoting digital farming, which is about having minimal amount of fertilizer, herbicide, pesticides, and water to produce nutritional food. So food is essential. Growing it requires a lot of opportunity for autonomy and, you know, mobility, but also last mile delivery, the space that Kamil is in, could also be very valuable, because, you know, we all love to go to farmers market. What if we could just, you know, go to our app and say, you know, I want this, this, and that, and it's delivered to you. Of course, you know, going to farmers market is a good experience, but if you're able to get that kind of a digital experience, then little by little you say, you know what, technology is really affecting my life in a positive way. And if it's autonomous, you know, vehicle delivering your grocery, why not? But I believe farming and agriculture could be our best opportunity for autonomy.
Great, everybody's hearing it right here. Kam is sharing another billion-dollar idea, a mobile app that gets you fresh food right to your home from a farm, delivered by an autonomous vehicle.
All over the planet. Not
all over the planet.
Oh yeah.
All right.
There is 50 different type of mango in India. So
Kamil's been thinking about this already. He's already got the market structure. Kamil, last word for you before we go to break.
Definitely, food delivery is a thing. So we actually even are planning some pilots of that in one of our sites in the near-term future. I think there's many spaces when, with the right investment, with the right focus, using machine learning, AVs, drones, a lot of some of the emerging technology, it can be significantly transformed, just like we're focusing on the cities. Now, maybe the only other thought that I would have on that is that it is for companies that pop up in those spaces to be very focused, because it is easy to try to be everything, and then you're really not good at anything. So that's why we at May are so focused about solving the transportation issues within the urban spaces. It's not to say that this is the only space that we'll ever be in, but for now, we're singularly focused on where we see the biggest value. And if there's other companies that actually pop up in some of those adjacent spaces and using similar technology, we'll be rooting for them. Absolutely, we'll be happy to share, because there's so much that we can use, put technology forward to make all of our lives better. But trying to solve all of the issues, like if we as May try to get to farms to tables, that probably would be a distraction that would prevent us from achieving our other or our first mission. So that's why we're really taking step by step.
Just wanted to mention this and the closing, something that Kamil mentioned, that information and energy have always been together in the past 150 years. First, you had the railroad, and then you had telegraph. Then you had cars, and you had, kind of a telephone and internet. Now you have 5G and autonomy and electrification. This is the future, and it's going to be here affecting our life for the next 20 to 30 years.